extraordinary piece of work. Congratulations to all three of you and to your larger team. I'll ask a few questions and then we can take some audience questions. But Max, since we have you, I'm curious to know how you felt about Dylan being the director of this project, and how your relationship, your creative relationship with Dylan.
I just trusted. I trusted him from the very minute we met. I love despite his cool demeanour, he's a kind of twisted maniac. It's been years he's been making this movie. He's so into making it. He made it. You know, as he said earlier, with artists and sculptures and paper and feathers and boys. And the way he understood it was glorious to me. I then felt very easy trusting him with it. I love to trust my collaborators. He can have it. It can fly off into a different form. It's a translation into a different medium, so I never sought to control it. We had wonderful conversations. So it's been, it's lovely to stand at this iconic and special place in public and have the premiere here and be able to say in front of you all, thank you. Thank you.
I would love to know more about the boys in the film. How did you find these incredible young actors?
We looked far and wide in London schools and beyond, and the remit was very clearly, we didn't want kids that have done too much drama or acting. We wanted kids who would just come in and be the uncontrollable little monsters that they were. As soon as there was no question it was going to be Richard and Henry from the moment they walked into the first casting, and just took over the space and didn't let anybody else, have any air. Like they were just amazing kids, and it was a case of like taking who they were and harnessing that for the screen and making the boys, the boys. And they were just incredible. They kind of became more and more comfortable with being on a film set, and we tried to make it, to set up every scene for them to just exist in, rather than say, no, you've got to hit this mark, and because that would never happen. It was just about giving them the freedom to be themselves, and Benedict was incredible with them. We're all fathers, so we could utilise some skills that we had already to go. Elsewhere, I found myself just having to humiliate myself to get them to do things. So I spent a whole day with the word poop written on my forehead. Their nickname for me on set was Weak Man. When you're trying to sort of win the respect of your crew.
Benedict, you are deeply embedded in this project creatively. Can you say a bit more about why this project was so important to you?
These two men here.
They were. Oh, hello.
That's working. Yes. Hello. These two men here is why it's so important to me. I mean, the book had a profound effect on me when I read it, and Dylan's pitch was really intriguing, and the friendship that grew out of our conversations. I had absolutely no doubt in my mind that we'd get a film like this. I knew from his deep cineastic, nerdy knowledge, his love of every kind of craft that you see and hear in the film, his idea and understanding of how to create depth and challenge sort of tone and genre and go through the mess of it, but also his personal attachment to the material. But most importantly for me as an actor, I guess I was kind of testing the waters to see if it was someone that could hold me, that I could trust, that I could fail in front of and try and do better, which is all you can ever do really, and have someone there who's got my back and who sort of understood process. And you know, it didn't take me long to realise I had a friend as well as a collaborator that I could lean on. So, yeah, the journey is quite an interesting one. Different in reality to what was on the page, but on the page very challenging. And like Dennis alluded to, you know, the children, a man in a big rubber suit with an animatronic head, and the 21st century crew with all that intimacy, all that kind of internal stuff, trying to externalise that was interesting. And just capturing little moments, playing, remember to be open with the kids, and also how to distance myself. And I found it difficult when the camera was on. I was trying to be dad, who's not such a good dad, and then when the camera was off, trying to be much better dad to get these children to feel comfortable, to feel like colleagues, to feel like friends who could play with me. And that was a joyous thing to do, which I hadn't really expected. I'm just reading, contemplating material and who I'd be working with and for. But I mean, it's a kind of feast for an actor. So many different challenges and tones to play with. So a lot to allure me into the project, and to produce it and try and harness this amazing talent onto the big screen for his first debut fictional feature. That's a huge privilege, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. I want to turn it over to the audience for a few questions. Yes, right here. The question is about the elements of horror alongside a story of grief.
It doesn't strike me as at all horrifying to you. It seems fairly banal to me, fairly everyday.
Oh yeah, sorry. I mean, the whole film has so many tones in it that honestly, it was a worry about whether the shifts in tone would help us arrive where we do at the end. But that was all Aaron Max's writing. It was a book that was kind of terrifying in places, really funny in other places, heartbreaking in certain places, messy, you know, and it was just the biggest kind of concern going into it was there are a lot of shifts in tone. And I feel like starting in a horror space felt right because the initial stages of grief feel like horror. You know, you're dislocated from your world, you don't know, you know, this thing that's so shocking has just happened to you that you don't know what's coming next. So it was very obvious to lead into that at the beginning, but then not leading the audience on too much that they expect it to continue in that way. So that was always the challenge, was kind of finding a way to take Max's book, which has the most invented form, and turn that into a film-shaped narrative, and the sort of nods to horror were a part of a way into that.
I think that also the force of Max's poetic prose is so visceral, and it's very real, it's very tenuous, you can kind of feel it and sense it. I think horror immediately allows you into something where that landscape opens up into something very meaty and real and viscous and disgusting and messy. The mess of grief, the mess of life. And also the kind of unexpectedness, like you said, but also this strange, uncanny tone which grief has, which is that thing in the corner of your eye, the thing that's not quite right, the thing that's not quite there anymore, but is there. And I think horror can play with that idea, the idea of not knowing quite what's around the corner. Is there going to be anything around the corner? And the full force of emotion in grief manifesting is something that's kind of horrific. It's the right violence to break the peace of the accord of life in a way. Whoa, write that down.
The iconography of the horror and the uncanny kind of, like, I was shown very inappropriate films as a child by an irresponsible parent. And what resulted was a sort of bond between my brother and I that was sort of forbidden, and it felt truer to connect that language to the language of loss than it did the kind of cliches of recovery and getting on and moving on and stuff. So it felt like a sort of almost a taboo space that was ours, and also we live in a world of profoundly appalling and violent imagery that's normalised in very improper ways, so it felt somehow a corrective, a sort of, almost like a sort of expulsion, an ecstatic corrective to give the boys that shared recovery with Crow as part of their acceptance and sort of communal space in the flat.
Question way back there?
Hi, first of all, thank you. I just wanted to, I was curious about the image of the crow on the couch, the three of them. If you could talk more about that, like how soon did you have that? Was that something that you came to, or did you know that you wanted something that looked like that?
Do you mean that when they're on the couch and Crow sits between them? And so it came from a passage in the book, which you'll remember this better than me, but it talks about Dad's boys and Crow as ABC, and it's kind of taken you can't take it into that. I'm really badly paraphrasing Max's book, it's very embarrassing, but you know the part that I mean.
I guess in this context I have to forgive you. Yeah, it's about the triptych, it's about like the inability of the human eye to take in a whole triptych and how you have to move from 1, 2, 3, but also Crow on the couch is kind of a joke about Freudian analysis. It's sort of sending up analysis. It takes an idea of Freud. He never really developed very much about wild analysis, where the analyst and the analyst sort of exchange places in a kind of deconstruction of the transference processes. So it's a little bit pretentious, but but also it looks fantastic.
Write that down too.
And then to that I added, there's a really cool picture of the Who on the front cover of The Kids Are Alright, where they're wrapped in a Union Jack, and that was my reference for that image.
That's teamwork, you know?
Any questions from the balcony? I know you guys get ignored. No? Okay, we'll come down here.
I was 41 when I became a widower myself, and my son was 10 at the time. So I can relate to the film and also the kid. So it's very touching. And so my question is, a couple of years after I became a widower, I started seeing The Widow. And we learned really quickly that eventually one of us would have to relive grief again. So my question is, do you think that the dad and the character of the dad would take that risk and find us again, knowing that one of us is going to die, you know, so we will have to relive this?
I think it's interesting because one of the things I loved about Max's book was that it helped me accept something I hadn't accepted about grief, which is that you never quite move through it, you don't escape the other side of it, you carry it with you for the rest of your life. But I mean, so often grief is talked about in terms of the sort of self-help 5 stages of grief, and you come out the other side and you're somehow whole again. Whereas in Max's book I found this far more realistic thing, that's you assimilate grief, and you know it might die down for a few years, but it's always going to come back. And so I think that the dad character in this is going to relive grief again. You know, whether he marries again or not, it's always going to be there. Crow's going to be back at some point. Well, I like to think that he will find love again.
I mean, I think we've got to be hugely ambitious. There's every different type of love imaginable. You know, the love he had with that character is a love formed in that meeting at university or whatever it is in the film, and that's going to be different to a deeper type of love you might have with a future partner that's tinged with grief, which is organically tethered to joy and ecstasy. So I think we can achieve any possible combination of these things we want between us. Yeah, I think he would be a little body conscious. That's my guess. Like maybe
Don't
you
look
don't
at me,
dress
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
It's a profound insight from your history, so thank you very much. It's true, you would have to accept that again. I think you can't love truly without accepting loss. That's just the way it is. That's the sort of torturous beauty of it in many ways.
It certainly accounts for the great and miraculous depth of it. I think we wouldn't want it as shallow as a spoon, would we? You know?
I think we have time for one more. You in the light?
Yes. We shot in 4:3 because it looks cool. But no, there were some creative reasons for it. One, the character of Crow is 8 foot tall, and you know when he's in the frame with the boys or with Dad, we wanted that extra space. Two, wanted the whole space to feel claustrophobic and Dad's world to feel closed in on him. So 4:3 felt like the natural kind of space to go in because it feels enclosed and it feels like they're very much trapped in this space together. So yeah, those are the reasons.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap things up. I want to thank the three of you for this remarkable film.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here.